Hello, friends. I woke up from a really challenging dream. It was like an awesome dream, but then at the end it kind of sparked something in me. It triggered something in me that is like a huge part of my past, maybe something I don't necessarily talk about. Well, I do, I do and have talked about my father, but I don't think I've talked necessarily like specifically. So, in my dream, I was at like this adult summer camp, it felt like. And, me and these 2, 3 other girls were sharing this really awesome room. And we were just having a blast at this summer camp, this adult summer camp. And at some point, my father is texting me. And I don't remember what we were texting in this dream. But I do remember getting really frustrated with my dad and being like, okay, this isn't going anywhere, so I stopped texting him. And then all of a sudden, he just pops up in my dream on the couch. And one of my roommates in this dream asked me, what's wrong? Because she could tell that something was wrong. And I was like, well, my asshole dad. And I pointed at my dad. And then then the friend was like, why don't you give him an ounce of empathy? And I was just like super triggered by that. So I go into our room so I can try to have like alone time. And for some reason, my instinct in this dream is to lock this girl up in a closet. Hey, Sarah. I'm talking about a dream, as well as connecting that with my dad. And this specific dream reminded me of a situation that happened when I was in my 20s. They say that I didn't rebel until later. I don't think it was necessarily a rebellion. I think it was more so like I'm trying to figure out how to be my own person. I am trying to like have my own opinion. Because for so long, I would just do what my dad said. I thought that my dad was like God. I thought he was God. I thought he knew all of the answers. He was so confident and so sure of himself, and he would tell me what to do, and I thought that was the right thing for me. And then I started in my 20s going to college. I started college earlier than that, but started taking these courses that were shifting my mind about certain things that allowed me to have an opinion that is just different than my dad's, and he didn't like that. Every time I would disagree with him on anything, and this was more so into my 20s that I started forming my own opinions and started having my own thoughts, and my dad did not like that at all. Did not like that. So this reminded me of a specific memory. I want to say I was 24 because I feel like my sister, I go based off of my sister's age, and she's 20 years younger than me, almost to the day. And I feel like she was like 4. And we were going to the movies in like this my dad's Jeep Wrangler, which there are so many fond memories of me as a child, me as my sister's age, going with my dad in his Jeep without like the doors and the windows. But this time it was me. It was my dad, my partner Cameron, me in the back seat with my sister. And I believe they're talking about politics. And I historically don't like talking about politics. Everybody who knows my father knows that politics are off of the table, because he can't handle anybody having an opinion other than his. especially me. I'm his only daughter, except for my sister, of course. But she's still 20 years younger than me. I was an only child for 20 years. And, yeah, it very much felt like I was an extension of my dad. My dad kind of treated me like I was an extension of him, and I wasn't my own person. And in this Jeep, they're talking about politics, and my dad is continually asking me over and over and over again while I'm sitting in the back seat, well, what do you think? What do you think about this? And trying to bring me into this conversation about politics, because I have played this game before with him. I've had a different opinion than him, and he cannot handle it, and it ends up in this crazy huge fight. Well, guess what happened? I decided that I still didn't want to talk about it. I told him that I didn't want to talk about it. And he kept badgering me. And then I was getting upset because it was like, you're not listening to me. I do not want to talk about this. So I raised my voice. And because I raised my voice, he started... This is from my memory, too. And this is my perception of things and my reality. Maybe, I'm sure the truth is, like, the actual... there's 3 sides to every story. Their side, my side, and the truth. But this is my perception. And because I raised my voice, it was okay for my dad to start, like, screaming at me in this car. And he brings my partner into it and is like, she raised her voice, right? And my partner is scared to death of my dad. I mean, I'm scared of him. My dad, I'm telling you, he can be the most charismatic, amazing, friendly, funny person. He can be the brightest light in a room. He is like the person at a party that you want to talk to and everybody gravitates towards. But when he gets triggered, he can be the most terrifying human, I've ever seen. Ever. And he was yelling at me in the back of this car, and my dad was trying to be like, Cameron, like, she's crazy, right? Basically. Like, she's the one who is yelling at me. She's the one who raised her voice first. And Cameron says, he sides with my dad, and he's like, yeah. And I am feeling totally, completely helpless with my little sister in the back seat. I felt terrible for my little sister. I didn't want her to have to witness this at all. And we were actually just getting to the movie theater to watch Toy Story 4, which kind of put a damper on things. But when we got to the theater, we were in the parking lot, and things settled down. I was getting really upset because I felt like I was being ganged up on, and I felt that I could not trust my reality. This is just one instance of this happening. I could not trust my reality because no one was understanding where I was coming from, And this is also me not playing victim. I completely understand, and this is me setting the scene for y'all about my relationship with my dad. And things kind of cooled off. I think I ended up apologizing, and maybe he ended up apologizing too, but we ended up going into the Toy Story, and he pretended like nothing ever happened. Everything was perfectly fine, and, we just carry on as if nothing ever happened. And I just feel so bad for this version of me, because she really felt like she was crazy. She really felt like she couldn't trust or perceive her reality. And, every single time, like every time I would go to visit my dad and my stepmom, they're 2.5 hours away, so I would have by the time I was 17, I would drive there on my own, and it was usually like my dad against me with my stepmom anyway. And it was really hard for me to trust my reality because I really loved and cared for these two, like hard, and was willing to do almost anything in order to maintain that relationship, especially because I had one sibling, especially at this time in the picture. I have 2 siblings now, but I really didn't want to leave my siblings, and I really wanted to be there for them. So it was this internal battle that I struggled and still sometimes struggle with, to be honest. And you know, this has happened so many times I can't even tell you. I remember having this amazing friend who I worked with, who we would spend summers together, and we just had an amazing time. And they would just pick on her. They would pick on my friend. Without her there, they would just talk shit to me, and it's like, she's my fucking friend. They were so concerned about, appearance and the way that people looked, and they would judge people who would wear, like, pajamas out in public. And I would be like, well, at least they're comfortable. You know what I mean? I'm kind of getting sidetracked here. But there have been so many instances where I have been in a situation where it's just me, and it's my stepmom and my dad ganging up on me and getting triggered by something and siding with one another, that I would just feel like I could not interpret my reality correctly. And I did not know this at the time. I didn't know what it was, but there were so many cases where there would be manipulation, gaslighting. I really don't take those words lightly at all either. And can especially recognize it because I have learned those things. I have learned how to do those things because I've seen it. And I would do those things unconsciously because I didn't know I was doing them. It's hard to change something when you're not aware of it. It's impossible to change something when you're not aware of it. Thank God I am aware of that now. But for so long I was not aware of it. And I would notice these tactics that, they would treat other people, they would treat me. I remember, like, they would talk so much shit about certain people, but then invite them over for dinner, and I felt like I was in the fucking Twilight Zone. I was like, why would you talk so much shit, but then invite them to dinner and pretend to be friends with them in their face? And I have talked about this in one of my episodes of definitely the first episode of my medicine, if you want to listen to that. I think I share it in there. And then the first or second episode in Open Book, starring Lizzie B and her diary, which both of them are at the link in my bio if you want to learn about those more. But a core defining moment that I had with my dad and my stepmom was I went to LA and Vegas with them, and ultimately had like a really miserable time because it was just it's so fucking tricky to explain because it's something that you can't really see. It's not like if I was abused physically, I could show you. And bless people who have been abused in any sort of way. But the thing is, with manipulation and gaslighting and that mental and emotional abuse, you can't really see it. It's like, it's so tricky to notice because you can't see it. And it's hard to see it. And it takes time once you're out of that situation to really connect the dots. And for myself, I felt so fucking crazy for such a long time. I felt like I couldn't really trust my reality, and just like in my dream, like I was talking about, my friends would be like, what are you talking about? They're great. I don't get what you're talking about. And I would try to explain these situations to other people, but there was really only one person who really understood. And I don't really talk to her as much right now. But one day, I decided to post anonymously on Reddit. And there is this subreddit called Am I the Asshole? I've talked about this somewhere at some point, but basically you post anonymously and you post your side of the story. People will respond to you, reflect to you, give you feedback, whether you are the asshole or not, or the other person's the asshole, whatever. So I actually tried to do this already one time, but I maxed out the amount of the posts because I had so many words and it was really hard to condense it, and I gave up. And then maybe a month later, I was ruminating in my mind. This was maybe a year or 2 years ago. And I just can't go to bed because I am just going through my mind, going through the series of events and being like, am I interpreting these things correctly? Because I really, I'm telling you, I couldn't trust myself. But I needed someone else to look at the situation. My partner, love him to death, but he was no help. As a partner, I'm sure he just wanted my dad to like him because he's a terrifying person. He can be terrifying. He can be the sweetest person on the whole wide world. But when he gets triggered, it's very scary. But on Reddit, I posted one night and I got so much feedback. I got like 25 responses, and a lot of people were like, oh wow, is your dad a narcissist? You gotta check out this subreddit called Narcissistic Parents. And I don't even like to use that word because I don't like to put people in boxes or anything like that, just in case this resonates with anybody else. That word narcissism really resonated with me for a really long time. And because those responses on Reddit, I started researching like crazy what narcissism was and what narcissistic traits were, and really connecting the dots and being like, wow, my father possesses a lot of these traits. And was so fucking devastated, was so fucking angry, and just felt like I was being lied to and betrayed, and just really leaning into my anger. And I leaned into my anger for a really long time. And I still am a strong believer that anger is a sacred emotion. It's a very sacred emotion that shows us where our boundaries have been crossed. My boundaries were crossed so many times that this anger just bubbled up and I exploded like a fucking volcano. And it was brutal. It was brutal. Finding out things that you thought you knew about this person that you've known your whole life. Like I thought I knew him the most out of anybody that I've ever known, because he literally, was my father. He was around the whole entire time. And then when I started feeling really angry about my dad, my mom would tell me things about their relationship, and I was like, things that like are not like unforgivable in a relationship. I talk about those things in the first episode of my medicine. But things that, like, they definitely added fuel to my fire, but I also don't think it's like, if my father never wanted me to figure those things out, maybe they should have never been done. And my mom never told anybody. She only told me at that point, and not only was I angry for myself, I was also angry for my mom. And yeah, having that dream this morning really triggered that part of myself. And again, I don't like to use that narcissistic word because I feel like we're all humans. What I would rather say is my dad looks like an adult, and he can be amazing at times. He can be the best person on the whole planet at times. But when he is triggered, he throws a tantrum. And it can get scary. And I would just deny my reality. He and my stepmom, it felt like they would deny my reality all the time. It felt like they were just overly focused on appearance. Appearance really mattered to them. How other people perceive them really mattered to them. Convincing me that I'm wrong so that they can feel good about themselves. They would put me down and they would put other people down to make themselves feel better. There were so many things that happened that I thought were normal in a parental relationship. I was just like, this is just what it is, right? And I did not think I was abused. I thought that I was one of the lucky ones that got away and did not have to deal with that. I truly was like, ugh, poor people who have been abused by their parents. I could never imagine, you know. I am so lucky that I'm one of the lucky ones and that I got away and I didn't have to worry about that. I really, really thought that. But I mean, at least from like my perspective of my younger self, I feel like I definitely unconsciously was manipulated and gaslit. And when I say that I couldn't trust my reality, that's kind of why. Because my parents would kind of deny my reality. And I couldn't, if I couldn't trust my reality, how could I trust myself? And I could only trust these people to interpret my reality for me. And it was a lot. And at some point, there was a couple of times where I was like, I'm all done with this. When I was graduating from college, around the age of 21, I took a year break from them. I took a year. I was like, I'm going no contact with you, which is a term, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. And maybe a year goes by, and I feel extremely guilty because I have my siblings, and I've prayed and wished for my siblings my whole entire life because I always wanted siblings and I wanted someone else to kind of experience this with me because I felt crazy. I felt like I couldn't trust my reality. So I prayed for these siblings. It's like, and they would guilt trip me. They would guilt trip me and be like, you're not around to see your siblings grow up. You're missing out on these huge milestones. And they would kind of use them as pawns against me because they knew how much I wanted siblings. So I came back and we just glazed over everything. If I have an opinion with my father, at least in the past, when I would share and express my opinion with my dad, he would immediately get triggered and would be talking over me the whole time, and I wouldn't get a word in edgewise. No matter how I phrased it, how my tone was, I tried everything and it never worked. And at some point we were just like, okay, well, we're back a family together. Let's just glaze over everything and shove everything under the rug. And then a situation happened which I talk about somewhere else too, is that I invited my dad over to see my house. One of the major accomplishments of, and something that my dad really wanted me to do was buy a house. And we were living in his house for a year and a half. He was supposed to be visiting this one day. I prepped the house. We cleaned the house the whole weekend. Cameron took half a day off. I took the whole day off. I bought my dad a present, and because it was also his birthday. And that morning, I don't get a call. I don't get a text. I don't get anything. And they did not stop by. I do get a phone call at 7 a.m. a week later, and he's just yelling at me on the phone. And he's screaming "fuck you" to me, and I'm screaming "fuck you" back, and I was so triggered. 7 a.m, and I hung up, and I did not talk to him for another year after that. I was talking briefly to him after a year passes again. I'm still kind of distancing myself, but realize that I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're blood related to me. I don't care if you're my mom or my dad or my grandparents or my cousin or my brother or my sister. I will not be talked to and treated in a way that is not of mutual respect. I deserve mutual respect, and if I am treating my friend or anybody with love and compassion, I am worthy of receiving the same. But it felt very one-sided a lot of the time. And I was trying to make my best effort, and decided that I'm not going to feel guilty anymore for my siblings, because I really need to do what's best for me, and I want to be the change that I want to see. And I also don't ever want them to feel like they deserve that by me condoning it. And that's a reason why I have lost lost trust in myself, and was not able to even perceive my reality correctly. I really felt crazy for a long time, until I posted on Reddit, and all these people are actually like, I relate to you. And that's what it took for me to kind of realize what was happening to little Lizzie, was reaching out to a bunch of strangers online, because no one else really understood or knew what I was talking about. And just in case anybody else relates to this, just in case you have a parent who may have traits like that, you're not alone. You don't deserve it. And you also don't have to deal with it. I felt like I deserved it for so long, and I had to deal with it because I had to, I was daddy's little princess for such a long time, trying to be this perfect girl for my dad. And then when that didn't really work anymore, I had, my sister in the picture, and then I had my brother in the picture, and it's been such a battle trying to go through, am I a bad person for abandoning my siblings? Because if anything were to make me stay, it would be those two. And my brother is 3.5, and I've only seen him 3 times. And I go back and forth, and I'm like, am I a bad person because I never see my siblings, the 2 that I've wished for and hoped for my whole entire life? But honestly, need to remember that, and Cameron even mentioned this. He was like, you would never be here. You would never be where you are right now if you were still talking with your dad, because he wouldn't let you, and you wouldn't be able to have, your own opinions in your own life, and he would be having a say in everything. And if anybody knows about again, really, unless you vibe with the word, this is why I'm using it. If you have a narcissistic parent who, they don't see you as a separate individual. They see you as an extension of themselves, and I just felt like I was an extension of my dad. And he would just parade me and just talk about me like I was this amazing person, but then to my face, he wouldn't treat me very nicely, and my stepmom wouldn't treat me nicely either. And it just seemed like a facade, and it seemed like a mask. They were wearing this mask, and I couldn't tell if it was me wearing the mask. And it was really hard to decipher, like, what's real and what's not. And I can understand why people end up in, like, mental institutions. I can really understand it. Because when you don't perceive your reality correctly, and you don't think you perceive your reality correctly, it's like, what can you believe? What can you trust? And I really wanted to share this in case anybody else resonates with this. Because I don't think parents are a thing that... I don't see people talking about parents a lot. I did read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, which is an amazing, amazing book. And that definitely helped inspire me to talk more about my dad and my stepmom and my whole situation over there. And to be honest, I don't know if they know that I post about these things. I have no idea. Which I think is kind of good. But my why is not to please them anymore. My why is to help other humans feel less alone, because this situation, what I'm experiencing, I don't think is a very rare. It's not that, like, to be honest, if I was listening to me before I was really leaning into my anger, I'd be like, yeah, that's not me. That doesn't happen to me. And I'm not trying to convince anybody otherwise. It's just, I would have not believed me before. And just in case anybody feels crazy and they can't interpret their reality correctly, and maybe they relate to some parts of my story, I just want y'all to know that you're not alone, and that you don't deserve it, and you don't have to fucking deal with it. And if anybody does resonate with this, please message me. Because for such a long time I felt really lonely and crazy, and because I felt lonely and crazy, I felt shameful for feeling those things. And because I felt shameful for those things, I wouldn't speak my truth and talk about what was really happening. So that somebody could be like, ooh, that's not okay. That's not okay for someone to treat you like that. But it took a lot of strangers for me to understand. And really felt similarly to that past Lizzie who was in that situation when I woke up from my dream this morning. And felt really called to share on here, even if it was a little jumbled and messy. Just in case this helps anybody, even if that person is just me, it's worth sharing. Even if he doesn't like this, even if my parents don't like what I'm posting, it doesn't matter. It's my truth. And I refuse to feel shame for something that happened in the past. Really I just want other people to know that they're not alone if they're experiencing this. And that you're not crazy. And you can trust the perception. You can trust your perception of reality. Because it is so chaotic when I didn't and I couldn't. So deep. I mean, so heavy. Like I can feel the emotion. So if you're feeling heavy and you're watching this, feel free to take a breath. We could take a breath together. I think it's another reason why I feel like destigmatizing this obligation to be with family all the time, and this, I feel like it's just this obligation to be around family first, blood over water, all of this stuff. I feel like that kind of perpetuates some of the things, some of those patterns. And that's why I share, like, it doesn't matter who you are. You know, I am worthy of having the, like, people around me who love me unconditionally and support me and support my dreams. And that goes for anybody. We don't have to feel obligated to do anything we don't want to do. Including holidays and things like that. I've decided that I don't do things that I feel obligated to do anymore. Even if other people feel like anger towards me. Because what happens is when I do things out of obligation, I create this unnecessary resentment that I signed up for. For example, I didn't want to go to my uncle and aunt's house to help them paint their house. I think I was also feeling sick, but I also didn't want to. I didn't want to. And I think that that's okay. I think it's okay to do things that you don't want to do. And not feel obligated to do anything you don't want to do, because if I did go over there, I'd be creating this resentment. And I'd be like, ugh, I don't even want to fucking be here in the first place. I don't even fucking want to be here. And could only imagine, like, I don't even want to be here. And if anything were to go wrong, if there were to be like an ounce of non-gratitude, I would just be creating that room for resentment that I would be bearing later and holding on with me. And I don't want that. I think that is more of a relationship killer. Trust me. Trust me. I know. Because of my dad and my stepmom, I would do things that I did not want to do all the time, and that created more resentment than any other relationship I've ever been in, and has led me to not talking to them for years. So it's like, do things you feel obligated to, but create that room for resentment and maybe risk not talking to them for many, many years, or just don't do it and save yourself that time and save the relationship and communicate what your actual needs are. And I still haven't done that with hey Haley. I still haven't done that with my parents. Communicating my needs and what my needs are, because there was no room for that. This was a heavy one. So if you're watching the replay, make sure to take some deep breaths. I'm going to take some deep breaths after this. And wanted to share, just in case anybody else feels similarly to my experience, because I don't see people talking about it a lot. I don't see people talking about parents and I guess abuse, like mental and emotional abuse a lot because it's so fucking hard to see it. But I hope that this helps anybody, even if that person is just me, that's okay. And to be fair, like, I do still love my dad and I still love my stepmom. I see them as human beings. I don't feel a victim. I'm not a victim to them anymore. I am responsible for my life and I'm living my life the way that I want to. And that means not doing things that I feel obligated to do. And I am the freest I've ever felt. The fact that I'm able to actually speak this on a live on Instagram and actually verbalize this and share is definitely proof of that. And I just want to encourage people to not do, like, you don't have to do things you don't feel obligated to do. And that includes spending time with anybody who drains your energy and is not for your highest and best and isn't supporting you on everything and isn't loving you unconditionally. We all deserve unconditional love, always. And I've had a really hard time letting go of relationships that were not that. But I'm glad that I am able to let go and have a breather, you know? One day maybe we'll be a big happy family, but maybe not today. I am still, like, anger is a sacred emotion, and because I didn't lean into my anger enough and I felt really guilty, I would go back into the relationship. But I wasn't setting it up for success at all. And I really need time. I need time away and I need time to process and be with myself and really, like, rebuild that self-trust that I can perceive my reality correctly, because I kept falling back down that hole, that dark hole, because I didn't rebuild that trust strong enough. So I would keep falling back into the same patterns, doing the same things, and, you know, it ended up the same way. But yeah, wanted to share in case this helps anybody. Message me if you need any help or support or resonate with any of this. Comment down below. I would definitely like to start normalizing things that, I mean, that's been like my whole existence is kind of dealing with that, even if I didn't know it at the time. And it's just something that I never see people talking about. Sending you love, friends. Another thing that I like to do, if you feel called, is, like, hug myself. Be like, it's okay. For me, I need this. Love you, friends.